Hey guys, this is Mark Hutten with myaspergerschild.com, and I'm going to take some more questions today. If you are a member of online parent coaching, I'm going to send you a link to this video. If you're not, feel free to go to myaspergerschild.com, and there's a link over there where you can sign up for online parent coaching. Okay, so we're going to take our first question here. Why does my child have to touch every pole on the way somewhere? I'm guessing that's what, like maybe a telephone pole or a light pole? I'm not sure, but anyway, it's part of one of the comorbid conditions with Asperger's and high-functioning autism is obsessive compulsive disorder. So if your child is doing that, that's part of his OCD, and it's very typical for kids on the spectrum to have repetitive behaviors or rituals, and it's actually a good coping mechanism for them to deal with their stress. So keep in mind that as a parent, there's some things that, some battles you want to fight and other battles you don't. This definitely goes into the pick your battles carefully category. He will outgrow this. I know it can be annoying in the meantime, but trust me, he will outgrow it. And the more attention you draw to it, or the more you try to correct him or stop him from doing that, the more you're feeding his compulsion to do that. Okay? Good question. Okay, next question. My son with Asperger's syndrome will walk on his toes when he's barefoot. Why is he doing that? It's a form of posturing for a lot of children. Some kids with autistic disorder, it's a form of stimming. But keep in mind that most children with Asperger's syndrome also have a lot of sensitivities, and one of their main sensitivities is sensitivity to touch, and the bottom of the feet are very tender areas. That's why when you tickle somebody, you tickle them on the bottom of the feet, because that's the most vulnerable area. So he may be tippy-toeing around because he doesn't like the carpet, or he doesn't like a rough wooden floor. Maybe the floor is cold. So he most likely is walking on his toes when he's in his bare feet, because he doesn't like the feeling of the flooring on the bottom of his feet. So that's just a guess, but yeah, that's also very common for kids on the spectrum, for some of them to walk around on their toes when they're in their bare feet. Okay, good question. Okay, next question. My daughter has a red ring around her anus. Is that something to be concerned about? And does it have anything to do with Asperger's syndrome? It is something to be concerned about, and it may have something to do with Asperger's syndrome, but most often yeast overgrowth is the cause of that. So if you'll put your daughter on the gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free diet and treat the yeast issue, that will usually solve the problem. Okay. My 5-year-old son grinds his teeth at night. I'm concerned that this is going to cause damage to his teeth in the future. Is there anything that can be done about that? One of the most common causes of teeth grinding is mineral deficiency, oddly enough. So you may want to try supplementing with calcium, magnesium, and zinc. Okay? Try that first. If that doesn't solve it, you may want to get one of those little plastic inserts so that when he does grind, he's grinding on plastic. And this way he's not going to be damaging his teeth, and it's not going to be as much stress on the joint in the jaw. Okay. Next question. Why does my child get mad when we drive a different route, when we drive a different way home? Well, keep in mind that kids on the spectrum like routine. Okay. But On the other hand, giving them routine is not always a good thing, because then they have no coping skills when things happen out of routine. So since you can't control everything that happens in your child's life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's going to be important to teach them the skills for a routine change. So one tip would be to, instead of taking the same way home all the time, take different routes. And you could even include a visual schedule that shows your child the different routes that you'll be going. So if you pick him up from school, for example, and you come home the same way every time, 9 times out of 10, you take the same route, but then on the 10th time you have to swing by the grocery or whatever, and then he gets all disoriented because you violated his routine. What you can do is, when you pick him up from school, try to find three different routes home. So you have route 1, route 2, and route 3. And you never do the same route 2 days in a row. So this way he never locks into a routine. But at the same time, he knows the routes because you've provided a visual schedule that shows him this is route A, route B, route C, and we'll be taking different routes home according to this visual schedule. Hope that makes sense. And good question. Okay, next question. My 7-year-old daughter, autistic daughter, bruises easily. Does this have anything to do with autism? I don't know that, I wouldn't necessarily say that has anything to do with autism, but it does have to do with the deficiency in essential fatty acids. So one of the things that you could do is supplement with EFA, DPA, cod liver oil, or flaxseed. Okay? So that usually has to do with the deficiency in essential fatty acids. And so supplementation will usually take care of that if your child bruises very easily. Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question is, why does my child have ammonia-smelling pee? Well, the short answer to that is he's probably not getting enough water. Whenever your urine has that ammonia smell, that's because the urine is very concentrated. So you definitely want to increase his water intake. And I know that sometimes that's difficult because kids on the spectrum can be very picky about what they eat or drink, and they may not like water. A good alternative to that would be, I'm not sure exactly what it's called. It's kind of like Gatorade, but it doesn't have all the sugar in it. In fact, it's calorie free. And it's like the closest thing to water, but it actually has taste. And you can also get those little packets, those calorie free packets, and different flavors, and put that in a bottle of water if he doesn't like plain water. So, but whatever you can do to get him to drink more water will probably take care of that. Now also, bacteria can cause ammonia smelling urine, but that's treated by just a good old-fashioned gut clean out and lots of probiotics or fiber tabs. So that might be something else to consider. And also you may want to consider reducing his protein. If he is like most kids on the spectrum, he's a very picky eater, and so he's probably only favors 2 or 3 foods. And if one of his foods is, for example, chicken chunks, and 80% of his diet is chicken chunks, then he's getting too much protein. Too much protein can also contribute to that. So those 3 things: get him to drink more water, even if it's flavored water, possibly get him on a series of probiotics, and then also look at his protein intake. Okay, great question. I have 2 children on the autism spectrum. The youngest one never gets sick. What are your thoughts about that? Well, if he never does he really never get sick, or is it rarely that he gets sick? In any case, hyperimmunity is common in autistic kids. And what I mean by hyperimmunity is your child's immune system is working overtime, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So if you have a child who never gets sick or rarely gets sick, then his immune system is on, going 90 miles an hour, because typical kids get sick, and especially when they start back to school. So having an immunologist run some tests will let you know what's happening with his immune system so that you can deal with it accordingly. So go to an immunologist and have him or her run some tests. Okay? My 7-year-old daughter has diarrhea quite frequently. Any suggestions? Well, actually more than 70% of kids on the spectrum have gut disease, and they really need to be scoped by a gastroenterologist and treated for that. Also, putting your child on the gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free diet, treating yeast and bacteria, and removing allergic foods will resolve most diarrhea problems. But strongly consider going to a gastroenterologist so he'll know exactly what is causing your child to have a bad reaction. Okay? Thank you. Okay, we've got time for one more question here. What do you do about a child that will say or do the same thing over and over and over? Well, what you're referring to here is repetitive behaviors, and that's very much a part of autism. It's called stimming, or self-stimulatory behavior. It serves as a source of comfort to the child. It calms him down. It helps him deal with stress and anxiety. In fact, there's even adults on the spectrum that will tell you that stimming calms them down. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's battles you want to fight and there's battles you don't want to fight. This is definitely not one you want to fight. Just ignore that behavior. If it's not interfering with his work or his chores, and if it's not inappropriate for a particular social setting, then I would just encourage you to let him do it. He gets some satisfaction from that, and it's not hurting anything. Alternatively, you could teach your child some acceptable substitute stims. For example, if he shakes his hands like this, and this brings him some comfort, but now you're out in public, you may want to consider getting him 2 squeeze balls, and then he can put his hands on his lap and sit there and squeeze the squeeze balls, and that will also be self-stimulating. Okay? And there's 1,000 different ways to come up with substitute stems. I'm just throwing that one out there as an example. So anyway, great question. Thanks, guys, for your questions. This is Mark Hutten with myaspergerschild.com, and I will be doing this again soon. Take care.